The terms Norwegian Empire, Hereditary Kingdom of Norway, Colonial Norway and Norwegian realm refer to the Kingdom of Norway's peak of power at the 13th century after a long period of civil war before 1240. The empire was a loosely unified nation including the territory of modern-day Norway, modern-day Swedish territory of Jämtland, Herjedalen, Ranrike and Idre and Særna, as well as Norway's overseas possessions which had been colonized by Norwegian seafarers for centuries before being annexed or incorporated into the kingdom as tax territories. To the north, Norway also bordered extensive tax territories on the mainland. As one of the original colonial powers of Europe, Norway, whose expansionalism starts from the very foundation of the kingdom in 872, reached the peak of its power in the years between 1240 and 1319. During this period of about 450 years, Norway was an influential European power both intellectually and militarily. The Norwegians also established trade relations and fought battles in North America, the Middle East and North Africa. They settled in the British Isles and controlled the Irish Sea with international slave trade, through powerful Viking city-states. Under leadership of the Norwegian noble Viking Danes and Norwegians sacked Paris and established the Duchy of Normandy. Under Danish leadership of Canute the Great they conquered England, and Norwegians also conquered Northumbria alone. However, Norway would become more concerned with diplomacy and intellectual culture after the death of St. Olav. The death of Norway's patron saint marks the modern-day city of Trondheim becoming the most important pilgrimage site in northern Europe. In the years 1042 to 1047 the King of Norway Magnus the Good did also rule Denmark before he made Svein II his heir. The Norwegians are credited for the only written sources of Norse religion and the Icelandic sagas, written in Old West Norse, the main language of medieval Norway. The language and the texts are of immense historical value, as one of the classical European languages and literary works along with Latin and Ancient Greek. Old West Norse in a relatively well-preserved form is still the official language of the modern-day nations Iceland and the Faroe Islands. But in Norway the language became mixed with Old East Norse from Denmark. At the peak of the Norwegian Empire before the Civil War, Sigurd I successfully led the Norwegian Crusade in order to aid in the liberation of Muslim-occupied territory in Europe. This includes Lisbon, before Sigurd and his Norwegian force headed for the Middle East to aid Baldwin I in establishing the Kingdom of Jerusalem. The Kingdom of Norway was the second European country after England to enforce a unified code of law to be applied for the whole country, called landslov. One of the most noteworthy facts about the kingdom is undoubtedly the story of the official Herdsman Leif Erikson, who discovered America almost 500 years before Columbus did, with either himself or his crew sharing the story, to find that it sparked interest only as far as Bremen, Germany. The secular power was at its strongest at the end of King Håkon Håkonsson's reign in 1263. An important element of the period was the ecclesiastical supremacy of the Archdiocese of Nidaros from 1152. There are no reliable sources for when Jämtland was placed under the Archbishop of Uppsala. Uppsala was established later, and was the third metropolitan diocese in Scandinavia after London Nidaros. The Church participated in a political process both before and during the Kalmar Union that aimed at Swedish side to establish a position for Sweden in Jämtland. This area had been from time immemorial a borderland in relation to the Swedish kingdom, and probably in some sort of alliance with Trøndelag, just as with Herjedalen. A unified realm was initiated by King Harald I Fairhair in the 9th century. His efforts in unifying the petty kingdoms of Norway resulted in the first known Norwegian central government. The country, however, fragmented soon, and was again collected into one entity in the first half of the 11th century. Norway has been a monarchy since Fairhair, passing through several eras. History. When Harald Fairhair became King of Norway after the battle at Hafrsfjord, he looked west to the isles that had been colonized by Norwegians for a century already, and by 875 the northern isles of Orkney and Shetland had been brought under his rule and given to Ragnvald Steinsen, Jarl of Møre. This is considered the first year of the Norwegian Empire. Iceland was more reluctant to give up their independent rule, so the Icelandic saga author Snorri Sturluson was given royal invitation to the court of King Håkon Håkonsson and was convinced that Iceland was by right Norwegian. So began the Age of the Sturlungs, a time of political strife in Iceland. The Sturlungs worked for bringing Iceland to Norwegian rule and spread propaganda through the position at the Althing and even resorted to violence before. In 1262, the Old Covenant was signed, which brought total Norwegian rule over the island. In Ranrike Konungella was built as a royal city alongside Tønsberg and Bergen. It remained Norwegian until the 1658 Roskilde Treaty. Herjedalen became Norwegian during the 12th century and remained so for 5 centuries. Jämtland started paying taxes to Norway during the 13th century and was later absorbed into a part of the mainland territory the same century. It was occupied by the Swedish during the Nordic 7 Years' War, but later returned to Denmark, Norway as a result of the Stettin Treaty of 1570. Idre and Særna, Norwegian since the 12th century, were conquered by Sweden during the Hannibal controversy. Ranrike, Herjedalen, Jämtland, Idre and Særna were permanently surrendered to Sweden by the Peace of Bromsebro 13 August 1645. Mainland. Administrative divisions: Viken, counties under Borgarting, Ranrike, Vingelmark, Vestfold, Grenafylke, Uppland, counties under Hedmark, Heinafylke, Hadafylke, Ranrike, Gudbrandsdælia, Østredalia, Vestlandet, counties under Gulathing, Sunnmørefylke, Firthafylke, Signafylke, Horðafylke, Rygjafylke, Egðafylke, Valdres, Haddingjadela, Trondelag, counties under Frostathing, Raumsdalafylke, Northmorafylke, Namdalafylke, Sparbygdjafylke, Einafylke, Verdalafylke, Skanafylke, Stjordalafylke, Strindafylke, Guldalafylke, Orkdalafylke. Rest of Norway, counties not attached to a thing: Jämtland, Herjedalen, Heilagjafylke. Tax territory: Finnmark, as present-day Murmansk in Russia, Finnmark in Norway and parts of northern Lapland in Finland. Expansion and unification. For the 600th Western Norwegian fish farmers began an exodus to nearby islands in the North Sea, Orkney and Shetland. Later on to the Western Isles like the Hebrides and Man, and westward to the Faroe Islands, Iceland and Greenland. Some of these islands were inhabited when the Norwegians arrived, but the local population was displaced or assimilated by the Norwegian immigrants. Consistently, the island's population got a Norwegian ancestry, who kept in touch with the fatherland over the North Sea. These Norwegian developed had their own chiefs or kings by Norwegian pattern, which was subject to the Norwegian royal power when it eventually got national authority. Often Norwegian kings had enough to contend with the mainland so the local power in the villages were often in the hands of local earls who operated on behalf of the king. Holdings in Sweden were in varying degrees Norwegian. At 800 to 900 s it is reasonable to assume that the population of Bohuslän, Jämtland and Herjedalen had no national affiliation, neither of Norway, Svealand or Götaland. It lay to the increasingly centralized monarchy to create this, which had to consolidate its right in the border areas above the neighboring kingdoms. Norway was then the first to integrate these areas into its kingdom. Overseas, Crown dependencies: Ireland, Grönland, Färöer, Man, Haltland, Orkney, Suthria. The Treaty of Perth accepted Norwegian sovereignty over Shetland and Orkney. In turn, Norway had to give the Hebrides and Isle of Man to Scotland. Anglesey periodically falls under Norwegian influence as an important geopolitical location in the Irish Sea. The Norwegian Empire's ambitions in Wales followed centuries of gaining control of the Irish Sea. To secure a strong Norwegian element in the medieval international slave trade routes, under the vassal of Orkney captains Sutherland and Ross, Dyflin, Anglesey, Vinland was established c. AD 1000 by the Norwegian Viking Leif Erikson from Iceland, an official herdman of King Olaf Tryggvason. Vinland and other potential Norwegian colonies in North America failed over time, most likely as a result of conflicts with the Native Americans. Although American soil probably remained a source of timber to sustain the West Norse societies of Greenland for several centuries, Iceland, Faroe Islands and Greenland remained under Norwegian administration until 1814. Legacy kingdoms: Icelandic Commonwealth, Iceland, Kingdom of Man and the Isles, Scotland, Kingdom of Dublin, Ireland. Colonies and settlements: Newfoundland, Canada, Limerick, Waterford and Cork, Ireland. Other larger settlements in Scotland, England, Wales and Ireland, held by kings and notables: Northumbria as Kingdom of Northumbria, England. York as Kingdom of York, England. Normandy as Duchy of Normandy, France. Sicily as County of Sicily, Italy. Periodic invasions: Galicia, Spain. Kingdom of Nekor, Morocco. Kingdom of Banu Ifrin, Algeria. The medieval city of York, located in Northumbria, came under Norwegian rule when Eric Bloodaxe conquered it in 947. He declared himself King of Northumbria shortly after his victory. Dublin was settled by Norwegian Vikings in the 9th century and came under Norwegian rule the same century. Norwegian York fell in 954 and Norwegian Dublin fell in 1036. The Norwegian noble Viking Rollo establishes Normandy in 911, with a sworn duty as a vassal of the King of France to protect the area against Vikings. Rollo formerly served as a vassal, while he continued to expand his power locally in northern France, to some degree making it a safe port for opportunist Vikings from Norway and Denmark. The most prominent Norwegian nobles to lead a military campaign in Sicily during the Norman conquest of the island are then future King of Norway Harald Hardrada and Jarl Erlingskaka. Furthermore, the most infamous Norwegian in northern Spain was Gunrod, nobleman and possibly the cousin or brother of King Harald II. Gunrod's forces did not only raid the coasts, they invaded the inland, occupied and sacked Santiago de Compostela, which still remains the capital of Galicia, the autonomous community of Spain. Monarchs of the Empire: Ingeling, Fair Hair Dynasty, Harald I Halfdanson, Eric I Haraldsson, Håkon I Haraldsson, Harald II Eriksson, Lay Dynasty Håkon Sigurdsson, Tryggvason Dynasty Olaf Tryggvason, Lay Dynasty Erik Håkonsson and Svein Håkonsson. Saint Olaf dynasty, Olaf II Haraldsson. Lade dynasty, Håkon Eriksson. Saint Olaf dynasty, Magnus I Olafsson. Hardrada dynasty, Harald Sigurdsson. Magnus II Haraldsson. Olaf III Haraldsson. Håkon Magnusson. Magnus III Olafsson. Olaf IV Magnusson. Eystein I Magnusson. Sigurd I Magnusson. Magnus IV Sigurdsson. Jarl dynasty, Harald IV Magnusson. Sigurd II Haraldsson. Inge I Haraldsson. Eystein II Haraldsson. Magnus Haraldsson. Håkon II Sigurdsson. Hardrada dynasty, Magnus V Erlingsson. Svea dynasty, Sverre Sigurdsson. Håkon III Sverresson. Guttorm Sigurdsson. Jarl dynasty, Inge II Bardsson. Svea dynasty, Håkon IV Håkonsson. Håkon Håkonsson. Magnus VI Håkonsson. Erik II Magnusson. Håkon V Magnusson. Civil War era. Ancient and medieval aristocracy.